Good evening and welcome to the 1995 Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft series presented by RWB International and RRL. I am Rob Lomas and I am currently joined in the commentary booth by RWB Charger and RWB Nate Newcomer as we bring you coverage here of qualifying for today's races at Watkins Glen International, one of the classic old school road courses in America. Also one of the fastest as well, with it Ollie Jarvis holding the real life pole position record at an average speed of well over 138 miles an hour. We're currently looking at RWB Marco, who is in the Mercedes here. He is currently, now we're looking at RWB Rigel in P12 in the session here, using the 1995 Mercedes DTM car from arguably the heyday of the Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft. Currently coming up to the section of track which doesn't have any corner names. So we'll refer to them as the third last corner, the penultimate corner, and the final corner. You see it's currently green at the moment for Rigel. He's on for a personal best lap time here, coming into the final corner now, down to third gear. Coming up through the box now into fourth. And into fifth and across the line, and that puts RWB Rigel into P8. It's a very, very good lap time indeed. Now looking at RWB Marco as he heads into the last few corners now. He's also set a personal best there, and big old lose there at the third to last corner. Now looking at RRL, currently in fourth place as he heads through the outer loop now, taking quite a lot of curb there in the inner loop as well. He set an overall best in the opening sector, so we're just watching him now coming through the chute. It's a good line through there. No need to worry about track limits for RRL. Hard on the brakes now into the toe of the boot. Coming up now into the boot. It's an uphill run in towards the heel. And coming up to the braking zone roundabout now, gets it stopped, gets it turned in. Waiting to see whether this is going to be a purple or a green sector for RRL. It's looking very good so far as he comes through the third to last corner. Car stopped just on the outside there. No need to worry about that. He's set an personal best in the middle section, overall best in the first sector. Takes a good line through there, not breaching track limits at all through the final corner now. Coming onto the pit straight, sparks flying out of the back of the Mercedes, and he crosses the line to go P2. Overall, just a couple of tenths, 0.212 seconds behind Clive Britton, who currently has pole position with a 1 minute 46.555. Now looking at John D in his Dime-sponsored Mercedes, coming into the last few corners now. Penultimate corner is so easy to get done for track limits in real life, both in IMSA and in NASCAR. And in fact, John has slowed down to come into the pits. Ralph, meanwhile, is currently on another hot lap here, coming up the hill through the S's now. One of the fastest parts of the circuit, the V6 in the 1995 DTM car, screaming away there as he heads into the inner loop. Nice line through there. Now looking at Clive Britton coming out of the pits now in the ProMarkt sponsored car. Coming out of the pit exit and into the S's now. Up through here, stunning section of circuit. The Watkins Glen International Raceway used to play host to the American Grand Prix up until the early 1980s, and in fact it's the only place on the F1 calendar where a car with a 16-cylinder engine has won a Grand Prix. It was when Lotus borrowed one of the BRM H16 engines. As we now look at Jack Camaletto, who is set a personal best middle sector. Not quite a personal best in the opening sector. We'll see how Jack's final sector is and where that puts him. Coming across the line now, currently in P4, and he sets a personal best lap. Stays in P4 though, behind Dorr, Arella and Britton. Going back to the BRM H16 story, as we see Klaus Schneider setting a personal best in the opening sector there. The BRM engine was notoriously heavy and unreliable, and the driver who won that race in the Lotus BRM combination, well, there's only one person it could have been, really. Jim Clark. Meanwhile, Klaus Schneider is currently on course for an improvement in his lap time, judging by the green for his sector 1, green being a personal best, purple being an overall best. Coming up to the end of the second sector here at Watkins Glen, not quite a personal best. Heading into the last couple of corners now, not wanting to get done for track limits there at the penultimate corner. Again, a good run through the final corner, getting quite close to the barrier there as well over the curbs. And he doesn't quite do it in the final sector either. It still remains in P5, does Klaus Schneider in the Die liveried Mercedes. It was, of course, most synonymous with another driver with the surname Schneider, Bernd Schneider, Mr. DTM himself. Currently looking at Justin Burley in 24th place. Set some very good sector times so far. Personal bests in the first and second sector. He's currently in 24th, but no doubt this is going to change very rapidly indeed. As he comes across the line now, he goes up to 23rd. And actually stays in 24th according to timing, but that was an improvement there for Justin Burley. Now looking back at John D as he heads out to the final corner. He set personal bests in the first two sectors. In the final sector now, currently P17. Where does John D go? He goes up into P14 in the Dime liveried Mercedes. 148.144 for him. Best time set by Clive so far is a 146.555. Now back with Klaus Schneider. Again, another personal best in the first sector. What's the middle sector going to be like here? Also a personal best for Klaus Schneider. Looking like a very, very good lap indeed. Very tidy that penultimate corner. Coming into the final corner now. Gets a good exit from there in his D2 liveried car. Is this going to be a personal best? Indeed, it is a personal best. He goes up into 4th place ahead of Jack Camaletto as we are into the final minute of qualifying here at Watkins Glen. Now we're looking at Dirk Gretschel as he comes through the penultimate corner. Again, Dirk on for a personal best lap time. Going through the final turn now. And about to come across the line. He doesn't quite manage it. Lost a little bit of time there in the final sector, did Dirk. Stays in P19 overall. Just pulling over to let a quicker driver through. And that is the end of qualifying. So it is Clive Britton on pole position in his Mercedes, with Ralph Varela in second place, David Dorr in third, Klaus Schneider fourth, Jack Camaletto fifth, RWB C. Hacks in sixth, Andre Bergsma seventh, RWB Rigel, very solid P8 for him, Mad Al in ninth place, Marcel Licken rounding out the top 10 there, Rudes Dennis in P11, ahead of Ross Hayden, RWB Jammer, John D, RWB Audi rounding up the top 15, then it's Timo Zemi there in 16th place. Do apologise, that did cut away there. We head into the 4-minute warm-up ahead of the race here at Watkins Glen. See one of the cars pulling out of the pits to take part in the warm-up session. To quote a colleague of mine at Radio Le Mans, usually when it comes to a big endurance race, bad things tend to happen in warm-up, but nonetheless, we're looking at URB, I think that says. I do apologise if I have mispronounced anything there. Comes down into third gear for the inner loop as expected, but still in a 1995 DTM car, almost 160 kilometers an hour, 100 miles an hour at slowest there, which just goes to show how much downforce these cars produced, relatively speaking. I mean, these were, let's not forget, the most advanced touring cars in the world. The Class 1s, 2.5 litre high revving V6s, traction control, 4-wheel drive, anti-lock brakes, rumours of active suspension being used, or at least trialled by some teams, which was only recently banned in Formula One at the end of 1993, and enough quick release couplings to be able to do a full engine change in the relatively short break between races if need be. And the total cost of the quick release couplings, I've read, was well into 5 figures. Dry brake quick release couplings as well. We currently look at Klaus Schneider coming into the third to last corner now. Coming up to the penultimate corner, where it's so easy to fall foul of track limits there. The amount of tarmac runoff area in the curb, and also just how fast it is. He comes around the final corner and into the pits at the end of his warm-up run. Quick installation lap, and even these engines used to rev to 11,000 plus RPM, and the Opel Calibra ended up actually having a lot of input from Cosworth on the engine side as well. We see RWB C-Hacks having another quick run just to test the race setup as we head into the last seconds of the warm-up session here at Watkins Glen. See a couple of other drivers pulling out of the pits as well. See RWB C-Hacks coming into the toe of the boot. Now into the boot itself. Now looking at Ralph Arella starting on the front row of the grid. One of the most consistent and drivers in the field, and also one who very, 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 very rarely indeed makes any errors whatsoever. As Martin Hughes from RRL mentioned last week, Martin is currently at Silverstone at the moment, and RWB Debug is currently taking a very, very well-earned week off. And if you're both watching this, then hope everything is well, and hope you're having a cracking evening. We see the grid start to form up here at Watkins Glen ahead of the 995 Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft, race 1 here at Watkins Glen. Got 20 or so seconds, in fact 20 seconds now till we get ready for the start of the first race here of 2 tonight. For those of you who are new to the series, it is a 20-minute race for the first race, and then the second race is a 40-minute race. We don't know what tyre compound everyone is on. Could be on softs, mediums, or hards. We saw last weekend at Road America that the races, in fact, go now. Currently a good, clean getaway by everyone, and it's Britton and Arella. In fact, Arella has the inside line, but Britton just about holds on there. It's still pretty close between David Dorr and Klaus Schneider. We're currently looking at the moment as they head up through the S's on the opening lap. There's quite a few position changes further down the field. It's still Britton, Arella, Schneider, Dorr. RWB Seahawks has got ahead of Jack Camaletto for 5th place. RWB Rigel is up into 7th place. Bergsma's dropped down to 8th there. Mad out still in 9th as they come through the inner loop for the first time on lap 1. Proper touring car conditions as one of the Dime cars is going a bit slow there at the back of the field. Unfortunately, didn't quite make out who was driving that, as we're still looking at Klaus Schneider in the 3rd place D2 liveried Mercedes. Battle going on between Hodgson and Charger for 18th place in the background. We're currently looking at Jack Camaletto now in 6th place, battling with Seahawks and Rigel. In fact, Jack is right on the back of Seahawks there as they come into the heel of the boots. Both getting stopped quite quickly. Quick shift up into 3rd. They're heading into the 3rd to last corner now, still with Jack Camaletto. Just looking for an opening, any opening whatsoever. In fact, Jack is not afraid to overtake when needed, as we saw last time out at Road America. Now looking at Dan Marchant. He has a look there with Matt Hodgson in the Dime liveried car. Merchant being in the blue and green car. Pulls out alongside, try and get the inside line there for the 90 as they start the second lap here at Watkins Glen. Has a look up the inside, but Matt has the better line there on the braces. Oh, there's a car off there in the background. That's... I unfortunately can't quite make that out. That's Dennis there, I think. So, Rude Dennis maybe. So that's very, very unfortunate for him. Meanwhile, looking at Jar, Urban, Dan Marchant now in the battle for 19th place. They got Marco Badowski for company. In fact, they've all got past Hodgson there as well. Going through the inner loop now on lap 2 and heading into the outer loop. They're very, very fast corner. They built the inner loop after 1990 to try and slow the speeds into the outer loop after Tommy Kendall had a very, very nasty accident in a GTP car where his brakes failed. And yeah, they put the inner loop in to try and slow the cars down, but even in a 1995 Mercedes DTM car, it's still a phenomenally quick corner. Currently on board with RWB Seahawks, looking towards Jack Camaletto. Now we're on board with Marcel Lurken, looking towards Timo Konizetsny. I do apologise if I mispronounced that. I can't quite see it 100% on my end. Coming now to start lap 3. This is the battle for 14th place overall. Lurken having a little think about it there on the inside into the 90. Not quite able to get the job done. And now heading up through the S's. The aim being to try and get good slipstream like we see here between Klaus Schneider and Ralph Arella. In the battle for 3rd place, Klaus having got past David Dorr there for 3rd. And unfortunately, from Klaus's perspective, he's got to try and find a way past Ralph Arella, which is considerably easier said than done. Meanwhile, looking at the battle between RWB Seahacks and RWB Rigel. Oh, little mistake there, almost bringing Bergsma into it. It's the battle for 6th place. Rigel getting very close to Seahacks and having to almost back out of the corner to a degree. They come down through the boots now towards the heel of the boots. Hard on the brakes now. Get a good exit through there, they all do. Heading into the third to last corner as we speak. Pretty much nothing in it between Seahacks, Rigel, and which is going to be of good news for Rigel. And Bergsma, it depends when Seahacks takes his penalty. In fact, he has been given a slowdown penalty now. Don't appear to be slowing down too much now. We're looking back at Ralph Arella. Got Clive Britton just ahead of him, and we're going to see Ralph getting a good slipstream there. Thinks about it slightly, but decides against sending up the inside for the inner loop. Heading into the outer loop now on lap 4 here at Watkins Glen. And it's still Ralph versus Clive in the battle for the leads here. So one thing I have noticed with these cars is that unlike the DTM cars, those of us born after 1997 or in 1997 grew up with, you can at least follow other cars. I will leave it at that. Meanwhile, we see Marcel Lurken and Timo Komarzewski battling here for 14th place. And in fact, they got Ross Hayden as well closing up on them. We're looking at Timo right now. Ross not too far behind in arrears. We're kind of looking at on the bonnet cam of Timo's car. Heading up to the third to last corner now. Both getting a good run through there. We're coming up to the penultimate corner now, looking at Rigel and Seahacks with Rigel still trying to find a way past RWB Seahacks. A very, very stout defensive drive so far from RWB Seahacks. There's maybe a little wide there at turn 1. Gets away with it though, not a breach of track limits. Coming up through the S's right now. Coming up towards the inner loop. Still right together. It's almost like these two cannot be separated at all. Heading down through the chutes now. Down into third gear, back up through the box into fourth. Not quite into fifth, back down to second gear for the toe of the boots. It starts climbing uphill quite early into the corner, so you've got to get a good exit to get, if you want to have a run into the heel of the boots. And still, Rigel not quite close enough, although Seahacks does run a bit wide there. Coming into the third to last corner now, as Bergsma again closes right up with them in this battle for 6th place. Heading into the penultimate corner now. Nobody running too wide, thankfully, there into the final corner. A good exit. It's a fairly long straight by Watkins Glen standards. We look at RWB Audi and John D in the battle for 11th place. Excuse me, sorry, looking at battle here, they got RWB Marco with them for company as well. Deal with RWB Audi as they come up through the S's. Such a steep climb through here as well. RWB Audi in the slipstream, pulls out alongside John D. It's on the outside, going to be on the outside for the first part of the inner loop. Doesn't quite get the job done there, although John D taking a lot of curb on the inside. Audi trying to have a go at holding it around the outside. Maybe try having a look now on board the bonnet cam of RWB Audi as we see a very good look of the rear aerodynamics of the Mercedes. Currently back hard on the brakes now for the toe of the boot. There'll be a contact there maybe between Audi and John D. Not quite the levels of contact one would normally see in the British Touring Car Championship, where it's usually more of a nudge than that to try and actually push another driver out of the way. Coming into the third to last corner now, still with RWB Audi on board his car. Coming up to the penultimate corner right now. Looks to take a little bit of a tighter line there than John D. And final corner, both taking very, very similar lines indeed. Back onto the pitch straight now. And it's going to be hard on the brakes around the 200 board. Maybe just before, maybe just after for the 90. Good exit out there, heading up now into the S's. Now on board with David Dorr, battling Klaus Schneider for third place here. Gap still about just under a second or so between Clive Britton and Ralph Varela for the lead of the race. As Dan Marchant is right in the slipstream of RWB Charger. This is the battle for 17th place. Still right in the slipstream as they come through the inner loop. Heading into the outer loop now. Marchant has to be careful. Excuse me, as he's got Marco Badowski for company here. Marco outbrakes him, has to try and hold on around the outside. Didn't quite do it, but Marco does have the inside for the toe of the boot. Hard on the brakes, and Marco gets the job done on the inside there of the toe of the boot. It means that Marco Badowski is now back up into 18th place, although admittedly, he is still battling with Marchant. Marchant not giving that up easily at all here. We see David Dorr and Klaus Schneider coming out of the final corner, heading up now into the 90 on lap 8 here at Watkins Glen. We saw a slowdown penalty mentioned from race control. So Marchant and Badowski are still battling very, very hard for position. Down in 18th place, we're currently on board with, now looking at John D and RWB Audi here. So close between them, heading up through, and in fact, Marco and John D are actually side by side, and they've got Marcel Lurken for company as well, heading into the inner loop. Currently, the two Dime cars there well on the inside. Now looking at John D, who's just lost the place to Lurken. He's got Ross Hayden right with him as well. Maybe John started on a slightly softer tyre compound to everyone else, and his tyres are starting to go off. Could be a contributing factor, methinks. Looking at RWB Jammer up against Mad Al in the battle here for 9th place. A very, very strong run from Mad Al indeed here. Currently coming into the third to last corner now. Still not much between them. Heading up to the penultimate corner. You speak, both keeping it quite clean through there, sparking away through the final corner. Both getting a good line through there, good run through. Now looking at David Dorr, who's closed right onto the back of Klaus Schneider. I wonder if Klaus is starting to suffer from tyre wear issues a little bit, because David has closed right up and in fact actually pulls out the slipstream very early indeed on the back straight here. Has a think about it. Good bit of defensive driving from Klaus right there. Coming into the outer loop right now. Still right on the rear bumper of the D2 car, and David Dorr has a look up the inside of the chute. Klaus on the outside, and David not quite able to get it done. Klaus has the inside line for the toe of the boot though. Coming through the toe now. So vital for David to get a good exit out of here. Has he done enough? Just waiting to see now. In fact, he has done enough. Out brakes Klaus, excuse me, and well, Klaus does fight back again on the exit of the corner. This battle raging on here, and Jack Camaletto closes in as a result. It's now a three-way battle for third place here with just under 4 minutes to go at Watkins Glen. Currently watching them come through the final corner as we speak. Camaletto in the Tabac liveried car, Schneider in the D2 liveried car, and David Dorr in the blue car at the front of this three-car train, with Ralph Varela and Clive Britton just up the road. In fact, you can just about see Clive in the yellow postmarks car. Ralph there as well. There's David, and now Jack right on the back of Klaus Schneider. They come up through the S's on lap 10 here. Is Jack going to have a look up the inside? It's almost bump drafting Klaus towards David there, for that matter. Both really hard on the curbs as Jack gives Klaus a little, Klaus's rear bumper a little bit of a kiss there. Of course, the D2 livery is most synonymous with Bernd Schneider. Not a lot of people know that Bernd Schneider raced in Formula One briefly for Zach Speed. Although unfortunately he was hampered with a ridiculously uncompetitive car, and well, they weren't exactly helped by an underpowered, unreliable Yamaha engine. Meanwhile, Jack and Klaus are swapping positions. We're looking at Marcel Lurken and RWB Marco here in the battle for 12th place at Watkins Glen. 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go now. Marcel having a little think about it. Just trying to close the gap a little bit more. Jack has pulled out a few attempts on Klaus Schneider in the battle for 4th place. Currently, Clive Britton, Ralph Varela, David Dorr, Jack Camaletto, Klaus Schneider, RWB Seahacks, RWB Rigel, Bergsma in 8th, Maddow 9th, RWB Jammer 10th, RWB Audi 11th, RWB Marco, Marcel Lurken, Timo Koneczetny, excuse me, as RWB Marco gets a slowdown penalty for track limits abuse. Excuse me, so Ross Hayden, John D, RWB Charger, Marco Badalski, Dan Merchant, Burley, Hodgson, Rude Dennis and Jones rounding out the field. Just over a minute to go here at Watkins Glen International. See Marcel right in the slipstream of RWB Marco's car. Gonna not quite close enough, able to have a look around the outside of the outer loop. Heading into the chutes now, down towards the toe of the boot. As you see, Bergsma and Jammer battling here for position. In fact, Jammer, I think, has just got past Andre Bergsma. for 8th place. Sorry, Andre has just got past RWB Jammer for... Excuse me, now it's showing Jammer in the battle for P9 with Mad Al. Excuse me, sorry. So, yeah, this is Jammer and Al's. David Dorr has been given a slowdown penalty for track limits abuse. But meanwhile, Clive Britton starts the final lap of the race, lap 12. Coming up through the S's now, Clive really has not put a wheel wrong all race. In fact, it has been nothing short of complete domination from Clive Britton, pole position and leading every lap of the race so far on what is one of the finest drivers' circuits, not just in America, but anywhere in the world. It makes you wish that the ITC, had it continued, had a round in America, because watching these Class 1 touring cars around Road America last week and Watkins Glen this week has been nothing short of spectacular. We see Jar Erb there in 20th place, unfortunately pulling off at the side of the circuit. I think he might have some technical issues, unfortunately, on his end. Justin Burley's been given a slowdown penalty. We see Matt Hodgson just going past him there. But we're back with Clive Britton now. Comes through the penultimate corner in Kurt Team's Pro Marked liveries car. Coming through the final corner now. And it's going to be Clive Britton who takes the win in the opening race here this evening at Watkins Glen International. The checker flag waves. It's Ralph Varela in second place. David Dorr holding on to third, just about ahead of Jack Camaletto. Klaus Schneider in fifth place. RWB Seahacks in sixth place. RWB Rigel in seventh, just ahead of Andre Bergsma. RWB Jammer in ninth place. And Dan Marchant there pointing the wrong way, unfortunately. Jammer in ninth, Mad Out in 10th. RWB Audi 11th, ahead of RWB Marco, who's just ahead of Marcel Lurken. Timo Konieczny in 14th place, ahead of Ross Hayden and John D. RWB Charger, good result from him, coming home in P17, ahead of Marco Badalski in 18th place. Now looking at Dan Marchant, having recovered from his spin, about to come home in P19, and then it's going to be Justin Burley rounding out the top 10. In fact, he's only coming up to the toe of the boot right now. We'll stay on board with him. Shows the gap relative between drivers. So we're currently with Justin Burley. Matt Hodgson is in 21st place. Erb is in 22nd. Rude Dennis is in 23rd. And Jones is in 24th place at the moment. Coming up to the third to last corner now in the car driven by Louis Krages, who Louis Krages is maybe better known by his pseudonym, his nom de plume, if you will, of John Winter. Krages, a businessman by trade, not a racing driver, as Clive Britton seals the Grand Chelem by getting fastest lap as well. Talk about dominance. That was a very dominant drive indeed there by Clive Britton. So it's Clive Britton, Ralph Varela, David Dorr, Jack Camaletto, Klaus Schneider, RWB Seahacks, RWB Rigel, Andre Bergsma, RWB Jammer, Mad Al, RWB Audi, RWB Marco, Marcel Lurken, Timo Konieczny, Ross Hayden, RWB John D, RWB Charger, Marco Badowski, Dan Marchant, Justin Burley, Matt Hodgson, Jay Erb, Rude Dennis, and R. Jones rounding out the field. And as we are in our break between races, time for another this week's history lesson with Rob. Not that I think many people particularly wanted this after last week, but oh well, we move, as the kids say these days. So during this era of the DTM was also well renowned for doing quite a lot of international travel. Such was the specifics of the DTM becoming the ITC, the International Touring Car Championship, and I'd been chatting to Pinners from RWB about the how when DTM resumed in 2000, they weren't allowed to use the Meisterschaft title and had to call it Deutsche Tourenwagen Masters instead because of the number of rounds abroad they wanted to host. Now, a quick look at the 2000 season shows that they had no rounds outside of Germany. Every round was in Germany to try and presumably to try and actually rebuild the support base of the series. But the previous season, the 1996 International Touring Car Championship, no doubt helped by having the last couple of rounds at Interlagos and Suzuka, had more races outside of Germany than in Germany. Is 14 races not in Germany and 12 races in Germany, back when they still had 2 races per meeting. And of course, even going back to the inaugural season of the DTM, they'd had races at Zolder in Belgium, in addition to the rest of the calendar. In 1991, they had races at Donington Park and Brno in what was still, at the time, Czechoslovakia, going through the transition phase and the dissolution of the countries. It became the Czech Republic and Slovakia in the immediate post-Cold War era. They had non-championship races at Donington in 1993 and another in 1994. And they also had a non-championship race at Mugello that year as well. And then when DTM returned, they always had at least 6 races in Germany and then 4 or 5 outside of Germany. In 2004, they had a couple of non-championship races in Shanghai on a street circuit in the city centre, where the downforce of the DTM cars actually started to lift the manhole covers up. And we ended up with one of the drivers actually hitting a manhole cover and ripping a wheel clean off the car. And then in 2011 and 2012, we had the non-championship races at the Olympic Stadium in Munich, the former home of Bayern Munich, who at this point had already moved to the Allianz Arena, which was built in time for the 2006 Fußball-Weltmeisterschaft, FIFA World Cup. And then in 2019, they had the non-championship DTM Super GT combined race at Fuji in Japan, which also led to some of the Super GT teams having to test the DTM tyres. And some of the Super GT teams and drivers like Sugio Matsuda, Ronnie Quintarelli, Jenson Button, Nick Cassidy and Ryo Hirakawa all went to Hockenheim for the final round, albeit not in a point scoring capacity. It was more unofficial. And the 2020, it was 10 races in Germany, 8 races outside of Germany, although it would have been, had the pandemic not happened, 8 races in Germany, 12 races outside of Germany. And likewise, last season in 2021, it would have been 8 races in Germany, 10 races outside of Germany instead of 8 races in Germany, 8 races outside of Germany, having gone back to 2 rounds per meeting. And it's looking the same for next year, although there is still a slot on the calendar as to be confirmed. But Yes, the DTM's very first away day was at Zolder. This is all quite important because according to the FIA, you can call a series a national championship with a maximum of one race meeting abroad, which is why British GT for example, gets away with being called British GT, even though they have a race at Spa each year. And how I can still remember a lot of series, a few club racing series rather, back in the around 2005, 2006, heading to Croy-en-Tonois. I apologise if I've absolutely butchered that. In northern France for a race meeting there, and it's still counted as a national championship. So currently gearing up now for the second race tonight here at Watkins Glen. Got half a minute or so to go before lights out. The race here is twice as long. It is 40 minutes, which means the drivers will have to make a pit stop here. Clive Britton on pole from Ralph Varela, David Dorr in third, Jack Camiletto fourth. Lights go out. Now the clock has started and the drivers all get away cleanly. Camiletto getting a good start there, getting past Dorr into third place. Camiletto there able to hold the position through turn one, although Dorr goes around the outside to reclaim the position. It's still Clive Britton leading from Ralph Varela. Bit of battling going on behind between Hayden Badowski, Marco and Audi. Coming up through the S's on lap one. Here, watch the Camiletto battling with Dorr, heading into the inner loop for the first time here tonight in this race. Dorr going very wide indeed and actually cutting the corner slightly there, which lets Camiletto through and brings him right into the hands of Klaus Schneider. Schneider there coming up the inside and getting past Dorr as well. Dorr's not going to be happy with that start to the race, and in fact, I think Rigel's having a little bit of a look there as well, for that matter, in the battle for fifth place. Badowski and Konietzki having a little bit of a battle there further down through the field for 16th place. Now on board with RWB Jammer, battling with RWB Seahacks for 7th place. Clive there still leading from Ralph Varela. There's not much in it at all between them as they come through the penultimate corner and into the final corner to end the opening lap of the race here at Watkins Glen. And Clive Britton is going to cross the line with 0.4 of a second or so advantage over Ralph Varela. Jack Camiletto still in third place. Klaus Schneider in fourth place. Jammer and Seahacks still battling away hard in the background for 7th place there, and side by side coming up through the S's. Jammer is trying to find a way past Seahacks. Seahacks not having any of it. Seahacks in the blue car, Jammer in the D2 sponsored car, the silver livery made world famous by Bernd Schneider. The Bergsma and Maddow battling away in the background for 9th and 10th. Bergsma in the D2 car, Maddow in the Sonax liveried machine. Coming up now to the toe of the boot. And heading out of the toe now onto the boot itself. It's still Seahacks just ahead of Jammer, Bergsma just ahead of Maddow. Coming into the heel of the boot now and heading up to the third to last corner. only referring to it as such because it doesn't officially have a name. Almost as if they just gave up on naming the last 3 corners. Heading into the penultimate corner now. And getting wide there by looks of things. No, sorry, that was Battle up ahead, excuse me. Now we're looking at Erb here in the Tobacco-sponsored car, which was run by Jörg van Ormen. Still in 21st place, sorry, ahead of March. And although March and Hodgson appear to be battling away, so we'll see how that plays out. Meanwhile, RWB Charger is in 13th place. He's got Marcel Lurken just behind him for company, and actually John D manages to, in the midst of that, get past Lurken for 14th place. Now looking at RWB Audi as he's battling with Mad Owl for 10th place here as Bergsma gets a slow-down penalty. Now looking at Erb as he battles Rich Jones' car just off there in the background. Maybe that's Charger. In fact, that is RWB Charger in the D2 liveried machine. Unlucky for Charger, is doing incredibly well there, well and truly holding his own. In fact, with Charger is so good at defending, if he'd have been playing in the European Football Championships this year, dare I say it, he puts up such good defence, England might well have won it. As gives Rich Jones Dan Marchand and Rich Jones is giving you a massive hit from behind there, and that's enough to send Dan Marchand through. As Marchand then hits Jones as well, and Jones is off there at the 3rd to last corner. Marchand appears to have backed off to try and redress the position. Now we're looking at Marcel Lurken and Timo Konieczny. Battle for 14th place here with 34 minutes and 11 seconds to go. And car they're going a little bit off in the background. Meanwhile, Klaus Schneider and Jack Camaletto are battling for 3rd place here, coming side by side into the inner loop. Camaletto holds the inside line there. Schneider still right with him. David Dorr ready to capitalise if anyone makes a mistake as well, for good measure. Now looking at RWB Jammer and Andre Bergsma. Jammer in 8th, Bergsma in 9th, Maddow in 10th place. Although this might not be for the exact position, excuse me. Now looking at RWB Charger with Marchand and Burley right behind him. Charger down to 21st now back to the battle between Klaus Schneider and this time with David Dorr for 4th place. Gonna help Jack Camaletto. This is gonna give Camaletto the chance to not have to worry about what's going on behind him too much. Now we're looking at supposedly the battle between Ralph Farella and Clive Britton for the lead, but we're still looking at David Dorr, Jack Camaletto and Klaus Schneider at the moment in the battle for 3rd place. Now we're looking at Clive Britton in the Pro-marked Mercedes. Hard on the brakes for the 90 now. Now looking at Ralph Arella. Ralph, not the sort of person who makes an overtake for the sake of trying to make an overtake. If Ralph is going to make an overtake, it's going to be very clean indeed. And at the best possible opportunity, he's got a good draft there. Head backs out of it. Lets Clive take the line through the inner loop. Ralph, interestingly, staying in 4th gear there through the inner loop, whereas Clive takes 3rd gear. Clive, I think, maybe thinking that because of how high revving these engines were, 2.5 litre naturally aspirated V6, that by having it in 3rd gear instead of 4th gear, he'd be nearer the top of the power band, I'm guessing. Be quite interesting to find out, actually, the rationale between taking the inner loop in third or fourth gear. Certainly from well, admittedly slightly geeky perspective, I shall confess on stream. Meanwhile, looking at the battle here between Mad Al and RWB Audi. Mad Al also putting in a very, very stout defence so far to hold on to P10. RWB Audi in 11th place. They do have RWB Marco just behind them, waiting to see if there's likely to be a mistake, as RWB Audi gets a slowdown penalty for track limits abuse. Unfortunately, something which is quite easy here at Watkins Glen to do. Now we're showing the battle for P4 between Klaus Schneider and David Dorr. Coming down the back straight now, heading into the inner loop. Klaus has the inside line and keeps the position there. Now we're looking at RWB Marco and RWB Audi. Battle's been enough for Mad Al to pull away a little bit by a couple of seconds in the Sonax liveried car. The blue car raced in period by Ellen Lur, the only woman to win a DTM race so far in series history. Although I have no doubt that Sophia Flörsch or Esme Hawkey could do the same one day. Meanwhile, looking at John D versus Marcel Lurken in the Battle of the Dime liveried Mercedeses, with Louis Krages / John Winter's name on the side of the car. John Winter being the pseudonym for Louis Krages. And Krages wanted to keep his racing hobby a secret from Mother, which rather backfired after the 1984 Le Mans 24 Hours, when Mother brought the morning newspaper and saw her son very prominently featured standing on the podium, having just won the Le Mans 24 Hours for Joest Racing in the Newman Porsche, alongside Paolo Barella and another DTM hero and an icon of German motorsport in Klaus König Ludwig. Excuse me, König or King being Klaus Ludwig's nickname, and rightly so. We are now looking at Marcel Lurken and John D. Marcel right on the back of John D's car there, heading into the inner loop. Marcel getting a good run through there. Not quite enough to be able to seal the pass into the outer loop. But still within touching distance, within a couple of tenths of John D. Getting very close again as they head through the chutes now on lap 7 here at the Glen. Coming into the toe of the boot. Right now, again, getting good exit. I think John D may have had a slightly better exit, marginally better than Marcel. John using all the track a little bit more there. Meanwhile, there's a battle going on in front of them between RWB Marco and RWB Audi, which is might be serving as a little bit of a distraction there for John. Meanwhile, Klaus Schneider and David Dorr still battling away for 4th place. Here, David has a little think about it up the inside. Klaus has the racing line though, and manages to keep hold of the position. Now currently looking towards the battle between, on screen, between Andre Bergsma and RWB Jammer. Here, Mad Al still in 10th place as Bergsma has a run. Now we're back with David Dorr and Klaus Schneider. David is trying absolutely everything. Oh, maybe just a little bit of paint traded there between Klaus and David. They head through the outer loop now. Absolutely no quarter given. Proper touring car racing this between Klaus Schneider in the D2 Mercedes and David Dorr in Ellen Lur's car. Can't quite make out the sponsor, unfortunately. Mercedes-Benz sponsored car. Heading now through the boot. Is David going to have a little look up the inside into the heel of the boot? No, he is not. Klaus just a little bit too far ahead for David to be able to outbrake him there. Now, we're still looking at Klaus and David in the battle for fourth place, despite what the graphics are saying. Showing the battle, the graphics are between Andre Bergsma and RWB Jammer. Heading through the final corner now. Oh, there we are. Looking at the pair of D2 liveried cars as Jack Camaletto gets a slowdown penalty for track limits abuse. Deal with Mad Al just in the background there. Ready and waiting to capitalise as one of the Dime liveried cars has come out of the pits. Of course, for the drivers, a pit stop is needed to change tyres. So it'll be interesting to see what people's strategies are. If anyone, for example, has started on the hard tyres as Bergsman and Jammer goes close to side by side, heading down the back straight as Jammer gets it done on the inside into the inner loop. Holds it through the second part and manages to do just enough to hold on, although Bergsman's not giving up without a fight. He's still right there with Jammer, heading through the outer loop down into the chute now. Through the chute. Mad Owl also starting to have a little look, starting to get a little bit interested. For good measure. Heading along through the boots now. Is Bergsman going to have a little look? No, he is not. But all this trying to find a way past Jammer is just going to be bringing Mad out into it as RWB Marco has just got past RWB Audi for 11th place. No doubt we'll be catching up this little battle right here. Now we go on board with the bonnet cam on Andre Bergsma. He comes up towards RWB Jammer through the final corner. They come now, barking away there. Down the pitch straight now. And looking at the battle here between David Dorr and Klaus Schneider through the S's they come. Klaus wanting to try and get fourth place back from David. Still nose to tail there. Supposedly looking at about between RWB Marco and RWB Audi. Although what we are looking at is the battle between David and Klaus. Klaus in his namesake's car. Then now we're looking at the battle between John D and Timo Konieczny, excuse me. That's where you see Maddow in 10th, Marco and Audi battling away there as Konieczny gets past Audi. Maybe is... Oh, man, all crazy is breaking. He's got Marcel Lurken in the background as well, wanting to try and find a way past... Oh, past John D for good measure. This is a battle here for 11th place. RWB Marco, Timo Konieczny, RWB Audi, RWB John D. Now back to this battle here between RWB Jammer and Andre Bergsma for 8th and 9th place. Maddow still holding strong in 10th. There's a bout here between Marcel Lurken and RWB Audi. They've got Ruud Dennis right behind them as well. Lurken trying to find his way past Audi. Anyone going to peel off into the pits? There has been a car which has peeled into the pits. So that is RWB Jammer, who has come in for his pit stop with 21 minutes to go. Now looking at about here between David Dorr and Klaus Schneider. Currently still 4th place for David Dorr. Klaus not quite able to find a way past yet. In fact, this is enough to bring RWB Rigel into the mix for good measure as well. Rigel now right on the back of David Dorr's car. Klaus is just in front of them in his namesake Bernd Schneider's D2 liveried machine. Klaus, I think, may be struggling with tyres somewhat as well. Not quite hitting the apex there at the toe of the boot. Now looking back at the battle between RWB Audi, Marcel Lurken, Rube Dennis and Ross Hayden. Battle for 13th. Lurken in the Dime sponsored car. Audi in the blue Mercedes-Benz sponsored car. In fact, actually, Rube Dennis is having a little cheeky look up the inside into the heel of the boot, but Marcel holds on, and that's dropped Marcel back by a little bit, by about 6-7 tenths now from RWB Audi, as Clive Britton and Ralph Arella still battling away for the lead of the race. Lap 12 here. Ralph doing his usual tactic of not making any mistakes, any unnecessary passes whatsoever. One of the fastest, but also one of the fairest racers in the field, and so is Clive for that matter, as quite a few drivers are coming into the pits now to make their pit stops. A quick rundown through the field for you. It's Clive Britton leading from Ralph Arella, ahead of Jack Camaletto in 3rd place. David Dorr is in 4th, ahead of RWB Rigel. RWB Seahacks is in 5th place from Andre Bergsma. Mad Owl is up into 8th place. Timo Konieczny is in 9th place, and Marcel Lurken is in 10th place. Rube Dennis is up into 11th place, ahead of Marco Podolski, Jay Erb, Matt Hodgson. RWB Charger, Klaus Schneider, who has recently pitted. It's Jones, RWB Jammer, John D, Dan Marchant, RWB Marco, RWB Audi, Ross Hayden, who we are looking at here, and Justin Burley, who I fear has retired from the race, as Clive and Ralph and Jack all come into the pits. Ralph there driving the car which was raced in period by Bernd Mailander, who everybody seems to forget used to race in DTM and in the FIA GT Championship afterwards for Mercedes-Benz, because Bernd Mailander is a lot more famous for being the F1 safety car driver these days. Kind of looking at Dan Marchant and RWB Audi battling away here. Now looking about between excuse me, just watch Andre Bergsma coming to pits. Now looking at Marchant versus Hayden. Hayden right on the back of Marchant there. Just going through the pit stop cycle now. Teams changing tyres. Set of soft tyres we found out last week at Road America. Not quite able to last the full 20 minutes of the sprint race, let alone the feature race, as Rigel appears to be struggling a little bit there with his tyres. Now we're with RWB Jammer, as Jack Camaletto gets a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Horrible bit of news for Jack Camaletto to receive. That's going to drop him well down the order. We saw last week at Road America, Jack is capable of putting up a proper John Watson-esque fight back through the field, a burn from the stern if you will. And given how late we are into the race, I feared this Jack might not be able to salvage too much in the Constellation drive. Here, now looking at RWB Marco versus RWB Audi for 13th place. On board with Audi now as they all come through the outer loop for the 13th time. And through the chutes now, up towards the toe of the boot. It's a definitely second gear corner, this one. Got to get a good exit though if you want to have a run into the heel of the boot, as Matt Hodgson gets a slow down penalty for track limits abuse. Heading into the heel of the boot now and in towards the third last corner. Good exit from everyone there. Heading into penultimate turn now. Anyone going to run too wide? No, well within track limits there, as Clive gets a slow down penalty for track limits abuse. So not only has Clive Britton got the penalty, he's also lost the lead in the pit stops to Ralph Arella. Ralph now in a very good position indeed to try and see if he can claim victory here in the second race at Watkins Glen. The more I look at the leaderboard, the more convinced I am that Justin Burley has in fact retired from the race. It's now looking at the battle between David Dorr and Andre Bergsma. David running very wide and giving the wall a little bit of a nudge there as well at the exit of the outer loop. Remains to be seen if he did make contact, and if he did make contact, how much contact did he make with the barrier? Meanwhile, looking at John D at the moment with Mad Al right with him for company. Now looking at we were looking at Konojetsny and Marco there, excuse me. Now looking at David Dorr, who is battling away with Andre Bergsma. Currently in the third to last corner right now, heading back onto the main part of the circuit. Bit of tarmac you saw to the left there is the shortcut used by the NASCAR Cup Series. Made for a very fast and frantic race indeed around here, as Clive reminded that he has a slowdown penalty. Looking at RWB Marco at the moment. Still battling away with Timo Konojetsny. Couple attempts in it so far. Still a little bit too far back for my liking to be able to make a lunge without overshooting the corner. Although Timo goes very wide at the 90 there. Heading up through the S's now. Long, sharp climb uphill here at Watkins Glen. Coming down the back straight now towards the inner loop. Heading into the inner loop now. It's still Timo ahead of Marco. Now looking at the battle here between John D and Mad Al. Mad Al doing a very good job indeed there in the Sonax car up against the Dime car of John D. Mad Al currently having a look here for 10th place, in fact. So Mad Al's in the Tobacco car, excuse me. Also Sonax rather, never mind. Going to be quite interesting to see if Mad Al can get close enough. The driver name on the side of Mad Al's car being that of one Mr. Jan Magnussen, future Corvette works driver and father to future F1 driver Kevin Magnussen. Kevin having secured himself not only a drive in IMSA for Chip Ganassi Racing, but also having finished that season off, managed to secure himself a works drive with Peugeot. The World Endurance Championship as David Doe has a little think about going up the inside of Andre Bergsma. Not quite close enough, though. Coming up through the S's now. Doe still right behind Bergsma as they head up towards the inner loop. Doe on the inside has a think about it. Bergsma just about holds on though, and that's going to keep Bergsma and Doe as they are in 6th and 7th place. Dan Marchant, I think, has also, I fear, has retired from the race. Currently showing as being +2 laps on R. Jones in 22nd. Burley, I'm fairly convinced, has retired from the race as well. Nevertheless, we'll keep an eye on this battle here between Bergsma and Doe. Coming up into the heel of the boot now. Looking at RWB Jammer and Jack Camaletto right behind them for company. Our timing screen showing, there we go. We just moved over to Jammer and Jack. Jack having a look absolutely everywhere he can to try and find a way past RWB Jammer in the Buckfast Racing entered car. Jack in the Paradigm Shift entered car. Heading up out the 19 towards the S's now. Now back with Bergsma and Doe. They're battling away massively as Bergsma just briefly manages to get past for a split second, but Doe gets back past at the S's. Heading into the inner loop now. No sign of a potential overtake. Excuse me, as Bergsma still right there with him as Marcel Lurken appears to have just got past RWB Audi for 14th place. Now still looking at David Doe and Andre Bergsma. Now looking at Erb and Hodgson. Just a couple of attempts in it. Erb in the Sonax car, Hodgson in the Dime car, Tabac car for Erb, excuse me. That's the Jörg van Ermen car as Erb gets the position there into the inner loop. Him and Hodgson both right, bouncing over the curbs there. As they come down through the chute on lap 18 with 8 minutes. Just over 8 minutes to go here at Watkins Glen. Martin Patter on the YouTube chat. Evening, my friend, has posted something actually quite interesting that for him, he said it's funny to see some of the aces in Assetto Corsa Competizione just midfield drivers in another sim. And I can see where Martin's coming from here, in that different sims obviously have different handling physics, different characteristics and that. So it is definitely understandable. And also, gotta be somewhat careful of how I word this here. It's understandable, and also if you're more accustomed to playing one sim over another, it can take a little while to learn how the handling model is, how the damage model is, how the tire model, the physics, etc. for another sim is. And from experience, it can take even someone as slow as myself a good few hours of just to get reaccustomed to a certain sim. So it is an incredibly good point which Martin has made there in the YouTube chat, as Rich Jones gets a slowdown penalty as battle brews on here between Ralph Varela and Clive Britton for the lead of the race. Clive having lost the lead in the pit stop phase to Ralph, closed right back up to him. Gap just 0.3 of a second with 6 minutes to go here at 6 and a bit minutes to go here at Watkins Glen. Klaus Schneider in third place, but 12 and a bit seconds behind, coming through the inner loop now, heading back towards the outer loop. Down in towards the chute as we speak, heading out of there. Clive taking a little bit more curb on the exit than Ralph. Unfortunately for Clive, getting to the back of Ralph is one thing, and getting past him is something completely different, and something I should add is easier said than done. Although, no doubt trying to overtake Clive is something which is also considerably easier to talk about from the relative comfort of a commentary box than it is out on a racing circuit. The battle for the lead still raging on with 5 minutes to go. Hughesy in the YouTube chat saying this is awesome racing, and I wholeheartedly concur with that statement. It has been another cracking evening in the 195. Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft here at Watkins Glen. Clive going very wide there at turn 1 and getting a slowdown penalty for track limits abuse for his trouble. For his troubles, that's dropped him back a little bit from Ralph. Still within half a second of Ralph as they are on lap 20 right now. Way things are going, I think we should be seeing the checkered flag at the end of lap 22. Says someone who was clearly fantastic at maths, he ended up doing a degree in sports journalism, trying to back time stuff, i.e. take anything mathematically related with a pinch of salt, because you haven't got the abacus to hand here. Meanwhile, Clive has closed right back to Ralph as well. Back down to around quarter of a second, down to just a couple of attempts there as they head into the heel of the boot. Now hard on the brakes for the third to last corner, which of course doesn't have a name, nor does this one, the penultimate corner. Clive not quite able to close the gap through there. Does on the brakes a little bit into the final turn. Ralph getting on the power a little bit sooner by dint of being in the lead. Coming down the pit straight now, again heading towards the 90. 3 minutes to go here. Yeah, I think there will be 2 more laps to go, including this one. One more lap after this. They've got a back marker ahead of them in one of the dime liveried cars. I'm unfortunately not 100% sure who that is, as Clive really closing on the back now. Ralph making him have to go the long way round. Clive trying to pick up the side draft there down the back straight. Goes side by side. He lets Ralph go through the inner loop as they come now towards the outer loop on lap 21. It's the closest Clive has managed to get so far to passing Ralph Varela for the lead of the race. Coming down the chute now in towards this fairly quick left-hander. Back marker there, just getting out of the way in the one of the dime cars. Hold on the brakes for the toe of the boot now. Clive really closing up on the brakes there to the back of Ralph's car. Clive, dare I say it, could have a crack from here if he wants to. He did get a better exit, I think, than what Ralph did onto the boot itself. Be interesting to see if we get an attempt here. Clive does make an attempt because Ralph is putting up a very, very solid defence indeed as they come through the penultimate corner on what we're expecting to be the penultimate lap of the race here. Coming down the pit straight now in towards the 90. Martin in the YouTube chat saying that he'll never be decent in ACC, although I personally beg to differ, Martin. But somewhat decent in R3E Raceroom racing experience. And Martin asking if Clive had also had a little bit of an off because of the bonnet, although Hughesy saying it might be a connection-related thing as Clive is on the inside here heading into the inner loop. He sends it on the brakes and gets the position, though him and Ralph are still battling for position side by side. Meanwhile, Clive has actually got the position there from Ralph RRL as we're looking at the battle between Andre Bergsma and Jack Camaletto for 7th place as they come up through the S's now. Now we're back with the battle here between Clive Britton and Ralph RRL for the race win here. Clive in the lead, Ralph having a look around the outside of the chute, briefly getting alongside, but not quite able to make the move stick there. Now heading up towards the toe of the boot. Clive just having to take a tight inside line. Ralph maybe having a little bit of a moment mid-turn there, still incredibly close to the back of Clive Britton's car as they come into the heel of the boot for what we're expecting to be the final time here at Watkins Glen International. Coming through there, Ralph not quite close enough through the third to last corner now. Charger there getting past Erb for 19th place. Elsewhere on track, Clive still in the lead of the race here. Ralph doesn't appear to be close enough and in fact isn't as they come into the final corner as Clive Britton comes through the final turn here at Watkins Glen to take the win here in the second race. Ralph RRL a very, very close and hard-fought second place. Meanwhile, Klaus Schneider in third place as Ross Hayden and Ruth Dennis have a coming together on track at the toe of the boot. Klaus Schneider comes through in third place. RWB Rigel is going to come home in fourth place. RWB Seahacks in fifth place. David Dorr, having lost out a couple of positions there at the pit stops, comes home in sixth place. Head of Jack Camaletto fighting back to finish seventh after his drive-through penalty earlier on. Andre Bergsma in eighth. RWB Jammer in ninth place. Maddow rounding out the top 10. Well driven from him. RWB John D in 11th place. Then just behind him, RWB Marco, and Marcel Lurken is in 13th place, just ahead of Timo Konieczny and RWB Audi. Ross Hayden there in 16th place. Just ahead of Ruud Dennis, who I think may have been involved in a little bit of an incident there on the final lap. Now looking at Yar Erb in the Lone Wolf car. He's got Charger about half a second or so behind him. Charger not quite close enough. This is the battle for 19th place as Jar Erb is going to come across the line to take 19th place here in the second. Oh, excuse me, sorry, in the second race. There's Matt Hodgson there in 20 seconds. So it was Clive Britton winning the race again from pole position, having a very tough battle with Ralph RRL in second place, Klaus Schneider in third, RWB Rigel in fourth, RWB Seahacks in fifth, David Dorr in sixth place, Jack Camaletto with the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 47.375 in seventh place, Andre Bergsma in eighth, RWB Jammer in ninth, Maddow in 10th, RWB John D in 11th, RWB Marco 12th, Marcel Lurken in 13th, Timo Konieczny in 14th, RWB Audi in 15th, Ross Hayden 16th, Marko Bdowski 17th, Ruud Dennis in 18th, Yar Erb in 19th, Charger in 20th, Ross Jones in 21st place, and Matt Hodgson rounding out the field in 22nd. There were unfortunately a couple of retirements in that race as well. That was another cracking race in the nächsten 195 Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft, hosted by RWB International and RRL, tonight at Watkins Glen International Raceway in the Mercedes C-Class DTM 1995. Absolutely fantastic racing there yet again from everyone. Well, that was definitely quite the race this evening. That was nothing short of brilliant. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break, I believe, for a couple of weeks over Christmas in the DTM series, but tomorrow night on RWB International we have the Battle of the Bands, where even yours truly might join in the dress code of band themed liveries, or in my case, whatever Iron Maiden merchandise I can find in the cupboards. That is going to be quite the evening indeed. And we've also got a cheeky race coming up on RWB International on what is currently penciled in for the 24th of December. The host is organised by Pinners. Santa's sack appears to have been very kind to some people this year, giving away plenty of BMW M4 GT3s for a cheeky race around Silverstone on Christmas Eve. And coming up the next round will be after Christmas at Hockenheim on the Grand Prix Strecke. And as Martin says in the chat, wirklich gutes Deutsch von dich. Vielen Dank. And all that remains for me to say is that if this is the last RWB International stream you watch before Christmas, then I'm pretty sure I can speak for everyone when I say I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy and prosperous New Year in 2022. I've been Rob Lomas, and in the week where one of the all-time great journalists in the UK, Fred Dinage, announced his retirement and had his final news broadcast on Thursday to pay tribute to the man himself, it's Hal for now.